Hey everybody, what's going on? Don't mind me today without the glasses. The glare was a little too much in this room for it. But the Montreal Canadiens surprisingly made a move in August, and it's something that we didn't see coming, at least not what came in return in this deal. The Montreal Canadiens were involved with a three-way deal with the Pittsburgh Penguins and San Jose Sharks, helping facilitate the Erik Karlsson deal on his way to Pittsburgh. It made sense that other teams had to be involved in this trade because so much salary had to go out. The NHL is a money in, money out league right now because of where the salary cap stands, and it just made a ton of sense that they needed a third team to get involved to have to deal with the salary situation that Pittsburgh had to send out money. San Jose could take on money as well, but they didn't want to retain a lot of Erik Karlsson's deal. So it ultimately made sense that these three partners all came together and the Montreal Canadiens made out really well in this deal, which is something I'm going to go into further in this conversation here. Jeff Petry is returning to the Montreal Canadiens, at least for now, along with Casey DeSmith, a second-round pick in 2025, prospect Nathan Legare, and as well, there is also potentially some other moves that are going to be hindering on what happens with Jeff Petry and whether or not the Montreal Canadiens can find a suitor for him. It looks as though for now, Petry is content with coming back to Montreal. At least that's what supports suggest. But it's not likely that we're going to see him in Montreal Canadiens sweaters when the season begins on October 9th. That's just not something that I see really transpiring because I just think although the relationship can be repaired between the player and the team, it just doesn't seem like this is a situation that makes a lot of sense with a lot of young bodies on the Montreal Canadiens blue line right now. Worst case scenario is that Jeff Petry is on their right side and he helps beef it up. And that's not even a bad scenario in the long run. You think about having players and this young mentality on the defense that the Montreal Canadiens currently have right now. It just makes a lot of sense that they can have Petry in the mix or they can trade him for more assets. So it's hard to really see a lot of situations where this is seen as a negative for the Montreal Canadiens. It's hard to really look at this as a situation other than a positive. The Montreal Canadiens are getting draft capital. They're getting more salary cap space because they were able to move out Mike Hoffman, who had this year remaining on his salary, along with Pitlick, who was just unhappy to be in Montreal because of the depth chart and where he stood on it. Montreal knowingly wanted to get more younger players involved in their lineup, and Pitlick was kind of the odd man out. So now that he has an opportunity to play in Pittsburgh because they're kind of a top-heavy group, it made a lot of sense to include him in this deal. It just makes a lot of sense overall for the Montreal Canadiens right now with where they stand in the division and where they stand moving forward in the Eastern Conference to continue utilizing their salary cap space, even though if you look at their cap space, they don't really have any right now. They're just able to do this because of what's potentially to come with Carey Price going on long-term injured reserve. And there's just a lot of reason for the Montreal Canadiens to continue buying assets like they are right now. I believe that if the Montreal Canadiens do trade Jeff Petry, and I would lean towards 75% chance that does happen before opening night, I would say that they're going to retain up to 50% of that contract, and that makes Jeff Petry a guy that can play 23 minutes on your right side, potentially be a top pairing defenseman that can also contribute on the power play. That makes him basically a $2.5 million defenseman. So there's just a lot of teams that should be lining up to pay that, especially when you have that for the next year as well as this season. So it just makes a lot of sense for a team wanting to win now to get that player that can play a lot of minutes on their back end, and they should be willing to give up a fair price in that deal as well. I would be hard pressed to see the Montreal Canadiens looking for anything less than a first round pick or a player that can kind of come into their lineup right now that's a young player and really help elevate this Montreal Canadiens squad. But either way, no matter how you look at this contract and this deal, it's a massive win for the Montreal Canadiens, and it gives them a lot of flexibility moving forward, especially in goal. Caden Primo, if he doesn't make the big club before opening night, could be lost on waivers, and there's kind of a goaltending logjam right now. So it made sense to acquire some insurance in Casey DeSmith, and who knows, he could moved as well. There's a lot of unknowns right now in the Montreal Canadiens crease, but regardless of anything that you look at in terms of the future, this is just a big positive move for the Montreal Canadiens, and it's one that makes a ton of sense. That's it for me today from Cook's Corner. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, leave some comments below about what you think about the Montreal Canadiens' involvement in that three-team trade and basically what you think this sets them up for moving forward. I'm Zach Cook. We'll see you later.